So while I thank the organizers for having accepted this paper, and which I will deliver also on behalf of my colleague Maurizio Corbella, who isn't able to be here today. I will also add that an extended version of this paper will be published in the wonderful next issue of the journal Cinema and Company, as part of a comparative overview of the popular culture in Europe between the 60s and the 70s, and this will be edited by Massimo Locatelli, Miguel Mera, and me. The phenomenology of popular music performance in the 60s Italian cinema could perhaps be best exemplified by a classic musical sequence featured in Michelangelo Antonioni's Blow Up. It involves a real performer, namely the Alberts, and it seems to exploit pop music performance to activate cinematic dimensions that deliberately move away from realism. In Antonioni's treatment of the Yardbirds' hit Stroll On, he places the British Wonder Band in a studio mock-up of the Ricky Tick, a famous club in Windsor, Berkshire, which featured a wealth of pop acts at the time. On the other, he has the extras playing the audience stand still throughout most of the performance, looking almost unaffected by the engaging groove of the song. The uncanniness of the situation is further emphasized when the crowd suddenly gets animated as Jeff Beck throws the neck of his smash guitar at them. This sequence problematizes liveness not so much through directly intervening in the musical content of the performance, but rather through sabotaging its natural staging. It is the relational bond between the performance and the audience, which constitutes the key to the liveness, that is set into crisis. Rather than standing out because of their supposed authorial legitimacy as an exceptional case, this example may be seen as signaling a broader attitude toward music performance similar to that found in more popular strands of Italian cinema of the 60s, typically represented by the successful genre of the musicarello, roughly comparable to an Italian version of the American jukebox film musical. In Highest Pressure, Altissima Pressione, Gianni Morandi's performance of I ragazzi dello Shake is inserted into a neutral, almost sanitized space, something in between a TV studio and a provincial movie theater. While the presence of loudspeakers and a microphone on stage might at first glance evoke a live setting, the microphone is actually never used by the singer, only by the announcer to introduce the musical guest. The fans resemble a television audience that is instructed to cheer at given times, regardless of the actual performance. There seems to be no effort to disguise the fact that Morandi is actually lip-syncing the song in playback, and the track even ends with a fade-out, as several other song acts do in the film. All in all, performance in Musicarelli function rather like a performance of the record, in the sense that the singer present, lip-syncing to his or her own hit, more often than not serves a mere doubling of the audio track. This paper attempts an intermediate approach to liveness in mediatized popular music performance by cross-examining the concurrent ways in which two media practices, film and record production, dealt with the increasing significance and presence of popular music performance in Italian culture at the time. We shall expand on how these two media promote basically divergent and fragmented, yet deeply intertwined ideas of liveness. In addressing such a culturally and geo-historically shifting category as liveness, we propose to tackle the notion of staging as though staging, a term theorized by Simon Zagorski-Thomas in relation to music recording. For him, staging refers, and I quote, to the aspects of the event that are external to the performances and yet contribute to the meaning we receive. It therefore includes all of those para-performative elements that surround the music act, and I quote from Philip Auslander, allow the listener a sense of participating in a specific performance and a vicarious relationship to the audience for that performance not accessible through studio productions. As an object aimed at reproducing a past musical event, the live album frames the live experience within discursive boundaries that are both genre and event-specific, endorsing a particular kind of media witness. Live albums from the same period seem to be concerned with referencing recognizable typology of performing venues and suggesting prominent links with other media, such as, for instance, television consumption, in the case we are about to consider. Mina alla bussola dal vivo was the first live album to be released by a highly popular Italian performer and media personality during the decade. Here, the performance is presented as an exclusive event in an indoor space, and in an attempt to emphasize the uniqueness of the live album experience, it might be noted that only half of the songs featured in this record were subsequently released as studio versions. Furthermore, the environment of the club creates an oral space where the listening experience is staged as a private, almost intimate experience. The songs are arranged with marked dynamic contrast between pianissimo and fortissimo, and the use of vocal techniques such as crooning and whispering is frequent.
Samba se resto ad aspettare di guarire la ferita che hai fatto nel mio cuore, dentro il cuore che chiede il tuo perdono, il perdono che solo le tue mani mi daranno, cercandomi domani. C'è più samba nell'uomo ritrovato, c'è più samba nel canto senza fiato, c'è più samba nel petto di chi piange perché stava cercando compagnia e voleva donare la sua vita, come sto facendo proprio con la mia. Sono triste, sai perché? Se tutto il mondo sambasse e tutti curassi di me. Sono triste, sai perché? Se tutto il mondo s'ambasse e tutti curassi di me. se resto ad aspettare, aspettare.
Other mainstream performers who saw their live gigs in clubs and similar venues released and recorded in the following decade occupy a similar position to Nunez. All of them exploited the recorded live show to present a rearranged and refined version of their songs in terms of instrumentation, while in none of them does the live performance seek to be a faithful rendition of the studio recording. What is also noticeable in all of this is the limited emphasis they place on depicting the relationship between the performer and the audience. Despite the small venues in which the live show is taking place, the performers are rarely addressing the audience, even to introduce the musician or the songs. A crucial element in the staging of this first typology of recorded live show is thus the non-reciprocal and non-inclusive relationship between the performer and the audience, which stresses the exceptional nature of the performer, as well as rewarding each individual listener with a self-appointed sense of his or her good taste. Large-sized concert and festival went through a tormented history in Italy in the aftermath of 1968. After the attempt to import the psychedelic vibe of the Monterey Pop Festival to a free pop event in Rome in May 1968, the number of public pop concerts increased gradually until the early 70s, accounting for events such as Palermo Pop, the free pop festival at Caracalla Dance in Rome in October 1970, and the Festival della Musica d'Avanguardia in Nuova Venezia. But by the mid-70s, the tense socio-political context surrounding pop and rock music in Italy had made it extremely difficult to find safe concert venues where the security of the performance and audiences could be guaranteed. What was the role of film and records in this context? In general, all of the above-mentioned events were poorly documented, with the exception of the Caracalla Pop Festival, which was broadcast on radio and became the site of a curious filmic remediation we are about to see shortly, and the Viareggio Festival, which was televised in the first 2 years. Now I want only to show an excerpt from the film Terzo Canale, Avventura a Monte Carlo by Giulio Paradisi, which deserves closer attention in that it germinates in the wake of the Caracalla Pop Festival and consists of a sort of pastiche between a musicarello, a psychedelic promotional movie in the guise of the Magical Mystery Tour, and the concert movie, all combined with references to Italian poliziottesco genre, road movies, underground culture, and perhaps too much more.
Mi fermo più e cerco all'aldilà un poco di felicità. Con questa realtà non voglio più morire e spero di volar lassù.
performative space of the new Trolls soundtrack in the film is highly conceptual. The band performed in the original soundtrack of the film from a visualized somewhere else, separate from the film diegesis, blandly recalling an abstract Andy Warhol-influenced live multimedia set. One of the first examples of a live record set in an outer space ever released in Italy is Dal Vivo, Bologna 2 settembre 1974, documenting the performances of singer-songwriters Lucio Dalla, Francesco De Gregori, Maria Monti, and Antonello Venditti at the national annual meeting of the Italian Communist Party, Festival Nazionale di Musica. By evoking a wide, open space, the album testifies to the sheer physicality of the performance, facing thousands of people, transforming the concert into an act of symbolic engagement in collective causes. Large spaces and crowds do not easily allow for rarefaction and subtleties in the strict musical delivery of the performance. Instead, they call for violent contrast and unexpected turn in the action, even at the risk of seemingly raw and unrefined. Improvisation, also in its symbolic balance of extemporaneous collaboration between performance and the audience, is another key component in such kind of oral representation of the live show. In the first track of the album, Lucio Dalla A, B, C, D, E, F, G, the sparse scatting of the singer is in the song's center part, literally emerging from the performative space, thus beginning the process that transforms a track lasting less than 3 minutes in its studio recording into an exercise of virtuosity and collective improvisation of more than 8 minutes. Just a brief excerpt. Beside improvisation, the interaction between performer and audiences became a key feature in live albums documenting concert in non-mainstream genres such as progressive rock, singer-songwriters, and avant-garde improvised music. There are often introductory fragments of conversation that often expand the background or context of the song, or just include some small talk between the performers and the collective entity of the audience, creating a sense of intimacy and inclusion that would be unthinkable when listening to the albums mentioned before. By recovering this another para-performative aspect of the live show, such details also convey the impression of listening on location. So to sum up and conclude, different and to a certain extent conflicting trends can be noted across the Italian media network when it comes to the status of liveness. For its part, the pop recording industry started to explore the market of live albums with increasing attention. The number of live albums grew considerably between 1968 and 1979, according to a trend that did not seem to privilege specific music genre patterns over others. At the other hand of the liveness spectrum, cinema seemed to have stayed anchored to playback techniques and the chief way of dealing with popular music performance. As we have seen, this may be linked to both technological and ideological aesthetic reasons. The example we covered highlights how a culture of mediatized liveness and a liveless media culture, though arguably divergent and subjected to different agendas according to the specific audiences targeted and individual authorial entities, were highly intertwined in Italy in the 60s and 70s. As far as cinema and record production are concerned, these coexisting attitudes toward the representation of the performative event reveal their media specificity and the different degree of trustworthiness afforded by each medium in the dramatically transforming cultural context of 68 and its aftermath. Thank you.
Any questions? Or comments?
So, you briefly mentioned the disruptions at concerts at the start of the 70s. I'm just wondering if you could talk a bit more about that. Because I'm wondering if parallels what's going on. Because my own research is in France and I've seen things happening, so I was wondering.
At the beginning of the 70s, the riots similar to that of that happened at the Led Zeppelin concert often happens in Italy when major acts were going to play, mainly for I would say political reasons, because there was this movement that believed that music has to be free and not part of the market, and so became really dangerous, especially for intellectual acts, to have all the investment needed to go to Italy and not having a concert for whatever reasons.
Sorry, so I couldn't work out what you said. Especially for what acts? You said it became dangerous, especially for something acts, and I missed what you said.
International.
International.
Yes.
So you would just mean simply from abroad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, and in Italy, historically, you have not so much venues for live concert, even for Italian bands. So I'm wondering if this this growing interest in record production for live performance could also be related to the lack of actual circumstances.
I would say, but please put me right, anybody. I was going to these things, not in Italy, in England, in the UK in the 1970s. I went to the Isle of Wight Jimi Hendrix, for example. And there wasn't anything political. You do read about people pulling down the fences at the Isle of Wight Festival, but it was nothing, and I didn't even notice, you know. It wasn't a big political act, and it was always, as I remember it, there wasn't anything political, any political undercurrents at all written in the UK. But do put me right, if there's something...
it would be correct. Like Richard Wright writes about like movements in 1970s in UK when he describes it as a just form of expression in general terms, so like a form of a rebellion, but not linking it to political issue. Just rather kind of as
the
a
fact that you were there at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I know that France had similar disruptions. In fact, I think some of them tried to disrupt the Isle of Wight, actually. I don't think they were very successful.
The Jimi Hendrix one?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, they did. I mean, you read a lot about how it was people were pulling fences down, but it was nothing.
Yeah, this is what I'm curious about, because at least in France it seemed, to what I've read, it happened, but it was quite limited. Free football and and such. But if you're suggesting that it was big enough to shift the way live music developed in Italy, that's something really quite fascinating.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, more comparative aspect. So we have potentially France, but the examples of the videos which you used and kind of the mediatization of the whole process in UK, it seems the process was rather opposite. It was actually really looked after. Whenever something happened at early stage, the TV wanted to actually put it on as a kind of So it's interesting, kind of opposite process in the sense it was like highlighted.
But I also have to say, from our experience of those early 70s festivals, there was no organisation. The Isle of Wight Jimi Hendrix, one of the biggest ones ever. There was no food. There must have been toilets. There must have been. There was no water. There was no drinks. And also, since then, I've been to the Leeds festivals with my daughter in recent years, and it all goes according to clockwork. And of course, you know, bands, well, Jimi Hendrix came on at 3:30 in the morning, for example, and the stage was on fire, which you don't often read about. Sorry, carry on.
No, it's interesting also because you don't have so much documentation, so you can rely on the people who were there, on performers that are still alive, just to have some witnessing of this. But there is a film about the last festival of the Proletariato Giovanile, which were held in Milan in 1976. But it's quite late, and it is in the wake of direct cinema in Italy, so it has a completely different agenda.
The University of Huddersfield, inspiring tomorrow's professionals.